Hello, and welcome to Alcohol Free Radio. I'm your host, Chris Becker, and I'm excited to have you join us. Whether you are new to the amazing and growing alcohol-free community, or someone who is already familiar, we hope you enjoy our program. This is where you can hear from some people making a real difference, whether as brewers and creators of amazing beverages, influencers in the community, retailers, authors, storytellers, and more. You'll be hearing from some amazing people, and hopefully learn some new things about the growing world of alcohol-free. We will be using a few segment formats and hosts as we aim to break it down and bring it all together. Our goal is simple: to build awareness about this great community and help make alcohol-free fun, easy, and tasting great. So here we go. Enjoy. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Alcohol Free Radio. This one's a bit different, and I'm looking forward to it. We're going to be talking to Bronson Hill, who is an expert in kind of financial health and wellness, and we're going to talk about what he does with his folks and his listeners, and some books that he's written or is about to write. So I like this intersection. We're going to be talking about it in the sense of a lot of our conversations are about health and wellness, and when you are not drinking as much, what you can do to maybe create value in that free time. So I hope you enjoy this episode. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Alcohol Free Radio. I'm excited to welcome Bronson Hill to the show. Bronson is the host of another podcast called the Mailbox Money Show and is a best-selling author, including books with the title Fire Yourself, Replace Your Working Income. So welcome, Bronson.
Hey, thanks so much, Chris. Really excited. Happy to be here. I'm looking forward to chatting with you. I love the intersection of finance, personal development, and just living a better life.
Yeah, I like that too. And I think, as I said in the intro for everybody, this is a bit different. We spend a lot of time, which I love, talking to makers of various non-alc brands. And we have ventured into, physical health and wellness and mindful health and wellness. And this seems like a logical next extension to financial health. And we were chatting before the show, and, it does come up a lot with some of the folks that are reevaluating their relationship with alcohol or just leaning into having alternatives. And that could even include THC beverages, but in the next morning, they're not hungover. They've got more free time for a variety of reasons. And I like this because, sometimes this could be a way to actually monetize that free time. So I'd love to hear a bit more about your backstory. Like, how did you get to what you're doing now in terms of your podcast and your book and your clients? But what did you do before that to get you to where you are today?
Yeah, actually, thanks for sharing about the show as well. I actually love non-alcoholic beer. I'm an athlete, and so I do a lot of races competitively, and I've just found that actually they're finding out that alcohol actually really decreases your athletic performance. And so if you can do things, other types of choices, it's much better. But anyway, yeah, my background. So I was a well-paid medical sales professional. I was making over $200,000 a year, which was great. I was working 30, 40 hours a week. But the thing I really didn't have control over, Chris, was really, it was nice. Well, I didn't have control over my time. And so I worked with, people in the medical field, a couple doctors that made, millions of dollars a year because they were surgeons, but they just had to work 60 to 80 hours a week every week. And I think that for me, when I think of people talk about, everybody wants financial freedom, but really what does that actually mean? To me, it really meant time freedom. And for most people, I think it actually means time freedom because you can make more money. You can't make more time though. Right. So the idea of being able to take vacations and, like last year I was able to travel six times internationally, including the base camp of Mount Everest. Right. So having those kind of mountaintop experiences, literally, and also to be able to write books, be able to create things that people really impact people. That's really what I wanted to do. And so I kind of had this experience of they call it the golden handcuffs, right? That it's too good to leave. It's hard to, my family, they're all, yeah, it is. You can't afford to leave. So my family, they're a group of, teachers. My dad's a college professor. My aunt and uncle, my grandmother, everybody's a teacher, my sister. So it's like, they'd be like, well, why would you ever leave your great secure job? What are you doing? And it wasn't until I got through around a group of entrepreneurs that said, no, you should pretty much leave as soon as you can because you're creating more income now in real estate. And so I basically, in the process of realizing this wasn't working for me, I had started buying single family houses. It was a lot of work. And so I realized that wasn't quite getting me there as fast as I wanted. So there's a quote that when the student is ready, the teacher appears. So I found a mentor.
Nice.
And he said, why don't you do multifamily investing? I said, I don't have the money. And he said, you can raise the money. So a lot happened in between there, but I started raising money for real estate and other projects and things like that. And so now we've raised about $50 million just from retail
Wow.
investors to go
Okay.
after projects. So really, the goal of Mailbox Money is it's not you buy a rental house and have a manager and you kind of manage it yourself, is that you're actually investing and then it's passive. So Warren Buffett, I think our most successful investor of our generation, really said, it's the idea of unless you learn how to make money while you sleep, you'll work
Yes.
until you die, right?
That's
So
right.
it's like some of us are good at making money, but it's like making money while you sleep. That means you actually teach your money to have a job and go to work and actually bring home money for you, so that if God forbid something happened to you, you weren't able to work, your family member had an issue, you're able to have that mailbox money coming in to support you. So that's a little bit of my story, how I got started.
That's amazing. And I think it ties, certainly into the story, the American kind of narrative of, I joke sometimes that, it's the system we live in is called capitalism. So it's kind of it's on the tin, kind of how this system is meant to work. It's like being able to put capital and to work for you when you're not necessarily putting in the hours on the labor side. It's never been hidden from us. It's right there on the name of the system that we live in. So I like that you're able to kind of talk to people around how you can bring that to life, which kind of leads to my next question. So, a lot of what you're saying, I think a lot of people would agree with, and probably easy to say, hard to do. How do you talk to somebody who's like working, they got their W-2 job, they're working 40, let's say 40, 50, and they want to create a window, like to get to where you're talking about, which is more further down the road. Like, what are those first baby steps that you do to even kind of create a crack in the door?
Yeah, because it can feel daunting. Somebody say, "Hey, I'm busy. I've got a family. I don't know how to do this. How do I, create a side hustle? What is this?" Well, there's really two ways to do it, Chris. Some people make really good money in their job. Maybe they are a physician, they're an attorney, they own a business, things like that. So those people typically have more money than they have time, right? So that's a great candidate then to become a passive investor. And there's ways to be a passive investor, learning to podcasts and shows, reading books, going to conferences. If you live in a larger mid-sized market, you can look online, say real estate meetup. You can actually go and meet people that are actually been doing this for years. And not everybody's trying to sell you something, right? You can just find somebody like yourself, which that's very transformational, right? Somebody who's not pitching any sort of products or services. They're just simply saying, hey, I'm an investor. I've been doing this for 10 years and here's how it works, right? So the one way is passive. The other way really is if you have more time than you have money, or maybe you don't have. I really didn't have. I had a little bit of time. I didn't have a lot of time. I didn't have a lot of money, but I was able to kind of hustle and say, how can I help people, and either finding deals or raising money. And I was able to do that. And so basically, there's a lot of people that have a money problem. The issue is not that they don't have money; they have money. They're trying to figure out how to put it in. It was outside of Wall Street because they don't like the volatility. They don't like
Sure.
some of the hidden misalignment of interest there.
Yeah.
And so people typically come to us for one of three reasons: either cash flow, which cash flow, either you're super wealthy or even if you're not, cash flow is really what allows you to replace your living expenses. To me, I didn't have to replace $200,000 a year. I only had to replace about $5,000 or $6,000 a month because for me, there was called the rat race number. How much do I actually need to live? And if I replace that number, then it was work optional, right? And maybe somebody's like, I don't know if I want to quit my job, but it's like, well, having the option to is great because most people don't enjoy their job. They don't feel engaged
changes
with
your
it.
mindset, right? And it's
Yeah,
sometimes,
totally.
like you said, the teacher appears. Sometimes the opportunities appear when your mindset is different around how you approach work for value as opposed for necessity.
100%. Yeah. So cash flow is a huge part of that. Is just getting that started. Once it's like a muscle. Once you learn how to invest and you get it started, it's really great. Then there's other things like long-term appreciation, and then there's tax benefits. So some people are paying. If you're paying more than $50,000 a year in taxes, there are tax strategists. We're not a paid tax strategist, but there are CPAs that do this, and most CPAs are not tax strategists. They basically are trying to stay off the radar, or they basically try to not get on the radar of the IRS. But for you, they're actually groups that they're paid for typically, but they'll make a strategy for you. And there are people that I know that I was able to actually reduce my taxes from a 25% taxable rate to about a 1% taxable rate. Right? I talk about that in my book. How did I do that? Well, there's different methods to be able to do that. The IRS actually provides a path on how to do it, and different incentives, and they're not loopholes. They're actually incentives when you provide housing or energy or other things that
Right.
actually aligns with their interests.
Got it. Okay. Tell us a bit about the about your show, and then would love to hear more about your book and anything else you're working on.
Yeah, thanks. So the show really was. I'm going to have you on as well, which is great. I'm excited for that. But typically, we talk about just different aspects of wealth. There's so many different assets out there. So a lot of times we get used to like, oh, I have calls. I've had over 2,500 calls with high net worth investors. A lot of these people are millionaires worth over 2 million. Some are much higher. And so I think of the doctor who's worth $5 million who only does stocks and bonds, who has a financial advisor. So one of the challenges with that is that there's fees. The fees they say that they advertise are about 1.2%. So if you're in one of these range dated, ETF, or not your ETFs, but like a fund that says, the Vanguard or Fidelity or something, 2040 or whatever the date you're going to retire, says 1.2%. Tony Robbins had a book that said the fees, there's actually about 2% hidden fees in there. They don't even disclose things like administrative fee, cash drags, that adds another 2%. So about 3.2% now. And then if you have an advisor, they take another 2%. So you're at 5.2%. So people don't realize the returns of the stock market are only typically 6 to 9% per year.
Yeah,
so that's most of your money. So once people realize that, they start to say, oh man, I feel like I'm in the matrix and I've actually taken the red pill here.
Yeah.
And actually, instead of buying paper assets, I should buy real assets, right? So we talk about multifamily syndication, which just means, syndication is just pooling investments together to go buy a project where people can be passive. And then there's general partners that operate it, like our group. And then there's other things. We've done oil and gas. I mean, there are groups that we don't do this, but people syndicate airplanes. They do coffee farms in South America. They do all kinds of different things. So just, people want to get into it. They want to learn how do I do this, or what are some of the pros and cons of each type of investment? Because I'm of the belief, as an investor, there's a time that's a great time to be a real estate investor. Right now, it's a challenging time to be a real estate investor because there's not a lot of cash flow because of higher interest rates. But there are investments that are phenomenal investments. So kind of continue to educate yourself is a huge part of it.
Okay. Tell me about and how does the podcast that you have, like what types of guests do you have on and what types of topics do you talk about? And what do you find for folks out there that are thinking about passive income but haven't really leaned in? What are the things they're asking about that are kind of, like you said, it's daunting. Like, what are some of the things that you're seeing coming up, especially in this environment?
Yeah. Well, pretty soon we're gonna have this guy come talk about living a sober life and alcohol free. So that's gonna be pretty amazing. but I'm a big personal development guy, so I think there's a huge link. So we do have people that come in and talk about personal development as well. Okay. There's I think Mark Twain said the first wealth is health, right? Because if you, in my background in medical sales, I saw these people on death's door on age 50 or 60 that they just
how can you think about passive income when you can't?
Exactly. So people think they're totally separate, like wealth and health and all this stuff. But so a lot of it's just about how do you, and I'm a big personal development guy, so how do we live a life that is actually all about, impact and legacy and enjoying it as much as you can, having the experiences. I actually run a mastermind group, which is a paid for group called the Wealth Forum. And I thought it was going to be, it's all out of wealthy people, but I thought it was going to be like tax strategy and sharing deals. And it is some of that, but it's been a lot of mindset stuff. It's been a lot of legacy. How do I teach my kids this kind of stuff as well, right? So these are things that a lot of wealthy people are like, how do I, once you have enough money, it's like, well, what I want to give back. I want to help I want to teach my kids. I want to have a mindset that's like, what's next for me, right? If I know there's a guy, I know he's 60 years old and he's, we're not worth tens of millions of dollars. He's done everything in life that he could possibly think, but he's like, well, what's next for me, right? So the discovery of those kind of things, because at the end of the day, like monies are just, it's just like zeros and ones on a spreadsheet, right? It's just numbers on a spreadsheet. But when you actually think of like, well, this can actually change people's lives. So to me, one of my big whys, Chris, is I want to try to end modern day human slavery in the world, right? It's a big, hairy, audacious goal. There's 20 to 40 million human slaves today. People don't realize there's people in sexual human slavery and other sorts of labor slavery. It's more than there's ever been in the history of this world. So, we talk about different topics, but I think for most people, going back to your question, most people, when they get started in this, it feels kind of weird. Is it, can you really get passive income where you're putting your money into something? Maybe you do a little work on the front end where you're vetting a team, vetting a deal, but then you're just passive and you literally are getting, we call it mailbox money, but it should be direct deposit money, right? Every month, every quarter, the money shows up, right? Is that actually possible? And a lot of people think that buying single family houses, doing an online trading strategy or an online business, those are passive, but they're not. And the test is if you can't 10x what you're currently doing. So a lot of people I talk to, they own a business, whatever, they have a rental house or two. But I say if you couldn't go quickly like to 10x what you're currently doing. So if you have 2 rental houses, if you couldn't quickly go to 20 houses, then you're not actually doing something scalable. It's not actually passive income. So it's important to see what you're doing, that as you make more money, you are able to deploy it in things that actually don't take up more of your time.
Right. Okay. That's really interesting. And it kind of ties what you were saying before I'm a part of an entrepreneur group, and the analogies or the metaphors kind of like climbing a mountain. Like you've spent your whole career trying to, maybe you've made passive income or you've built an entrepreneurial business or what have you. You could be a professional like a doctoral or what, all those various paths, but you've gotten to where you have the cash flow that you need, and now time is more valuable. And what does that look like? And it makes people start to think about, giving back to the community and things like that. So I love that you've tied that kind of in. Going back to, again, some of these, are there a couple success stories where, tying into that earlier theme about people are like looking at their whole life and the financial, people look at your friends, your family, your spirituality, your physical health, your mental health, your financial health. You tie all these things together and people are looking for kind of these paths forward. But this one's a tough one, I think, for a lot of people. And I know I keep hitting on this point. Can you give us a couple, an example of where somebody has gone from almost like, I don't see how I'm ever going to get to any type of passive income, to basically a success story. Give us some kind of some flavor give people the sense of how doable this is.
Yeah. So I have some examples in my books. I think of a guy named George who's been part of our investor community for a while. And again, for most people, investing with someone you've never met or somebody who lives in another state, it just sounds weird. It's like, well, that just sounds like, why would I ever do that? Like, how would I trust it? Like, what does that even look like? But what I realize, it's like a muscle, again, everything until you've tried a certain workout, you just don't know. Right. But when like I said, if you're at an event where there's other passive investors, so again, no, I educate people. I love educating people. I also have our deals. We do deals. We have investors come with us to our deals. So I'm not fully unbiased. I'm part of the financial industry, right? So I have people I'm excited about our deals. But there are other people that are very much like a lot of our listeners, or maybe like you, Chris, that are like, I don't have a dog in the fight. I don't care if somebody does this deal or that deal. I just want to have a great deal and grow my wealth. Right. Right. So they're not trying to sell you anything. Right. So they're just simply a peer who's like, and maybe they've been doing this for 5, 10, 15 years. So what'll happen for a lot of people is they'll go and they'll find somebody who can be kind of like a friend or a mentor in this, who's a peer, and that becomes very transformational, because they say, hey, this is what I've done, this is what I've learned, and it's not the success stories that are great, it's the things that what didn't go well. Well, I invested these guys, and I should have listened to my gut here, and here's what happened here. We got bad timing as the rates rose really quickly, and we didn't think that was going to happen, right? So it's not that everything's going to go perfect, but it's just getting those relationships around you and hearing from people that have done it. It kind of is like, oh, okay, I actually see how this could work. And the reason why a lot of people start this is because in Wall Street, it's very difficult to get cash flow, right? You can invest in stuff, you get things that appreciate, whatever, but you have, every time you sell, you have a taxable event. It can be as high as 35% or higher, depending on if it's ordinary income or not. And so, you have challenges with how do you actually grow your wealth where you actually can live off of it without bringing down your principals. People say, oh, you've got to save, $2 million, $1 million, and you live off the interest. And it's like, well, interest really doesn't pay you a lot in most times, right? So if you can have, investments that pay you, kind of between, 8 and 15% annually, which is possible. If you look at alternative assets such as buying commercial real estate, buying businesses, buying oil and gas, these are things traditionally that produce about 2x the return of buying stocks and bonds over different indexes, right? So, and they're just not as volatile, right? So I think when people so it really starts with learning. The best investment we make really is in our own education. Huge. And I think sometimes we try to complicate it, but it's really actually being in the room. It's reading the book. It's asking the question. It's getting on the phone and kind of learning about investments and giving yourself a goal. Hey, not looking at things forever. A lot of people get stuck in analysis paralysis, but saying, hey, okay, in the next 90 days, I'm going to invest in, I'm going to look at 10 different deals. I'm going to invest in one, right? And it'll probably go okay. You'll learn some things and you'll decide how you want to move forward.
Yeah, I think a piece of that is, and especially back to people who are kind of trying to get, how do you start? For me, it's like being open-minded, probably listening. If you're listening to this podcast and this is something you've thought about, or your podcast or what have you, then you're obviously already out there kind of curious. But the other piece is just networking, talking to people, like without any agenda. It's just like, hey, I'm out there, I'm talking about this, or I'm thinking about that. And you start looking at, you see, I'm often surprised, if you just ask for 5 minutes, say, hey, I'm not asking for a job, I'm not selling you anything, but you got 5 minutes. Can I buy you a coffee, or can I jump on a Google Meet or Zoom? Would love to pick your brain about something. People love to talk about what they know about
Yeah.
And a lot of those successful entrepreneurs have also learned the value of networking, kind of with no payload agenda. So, and so someone's like, hey, yeah, great. You can just go out there and do that, and that doesn't cost anything. It takes a bit of time, and gives you kind of the muscle. It kind of exercises that muscle to say, hey, I can do this. I can have this conversation. I can learn a bit. I can learn a few terms. So I think what you're doing and what you're able to bring kind of gives people some of those, the taxonomy, the verbiage, the language, and kind of ideas of where to start. So it's really exciting to see, and I hope a lot of people are taking advantage of that to become capitalists in the world of capitalism, which America is all about. So how do people stay in touch with you if they want to learn more and hear more?
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate you having me today. I have a new guide I just wrote about my 3 favorite cash flow investments for 2025. And so I just finished it, and it just became available. If people text the word cash flow, all one word, so cash flow, to the number 33777. So if you text on your phone 33777 and you text the word cash flow, all one word, I'll send that to you for free to let you know as far as upcoming offerings, things we have as well. But that's just a gift I'd love to give to your audience. I'm pretty excited about that resource to be able to share it.
That's awesome. Bronson Hill, host of the Mailbox Money Show and best-selling author. I really appreciate your time coming on and giving people kind of more real examples of how time available through a more healthy lifestyle can also be used to make money.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. Really great having you. Excited to have you on my show as well.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Take care. Well, we hope you enjoyed this episode of Alcohol Free Radio. We'd love to hear from you. Send us a message on social media or through email at hello@betterroads.com. Great to be here with you all together. Take care.